The stars stretched endlessly in every direction. But Captain Alara Voss hardly noticed. She stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, her fingers lightly brushing the controls as her gaze swept the void. The human fleet had been stationed here for weeks at the edge of Orion's Reach, a border region that was quiet, too quiet. Every officer knew the legends. The Thryn, an alien race feared across multiple star systems for their ruthlessness, had eyes on this territory. Suddenly, a ripple in the darkness of space appeared, thick lines of energy streaking outward as massive ships emerged from the void. The sensors screamed warnings, but Alara remained calm. She adjusted her hair with a casual flick of her fingers and tilted her head, studying the incoming fleet. There were more than anyone had anticipated, warships stacked in terrifying numbers, each bristling with weapons designed to obliterate entire planets. The bridge erupted in nervous chatter. "Captain! Multiple hostiles detected. They are moving fast." "Stay calm," Alara said softly, her tone almost too calm to match the panic around her. Her eyes, a steel-gray shade, scanned the enemy fleet. There was something rhythmic about their movement, something predictable. The Thryn relied on intimidation, on overwhelming firepower, and humans relied on wit. The tactical officer, a young lieutenant named Ramos, frowned. "Captain, their weapons are ready. They could destroy us before we even fire a shot." Alara smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a show." Her crew exchanged nervous glances. "A show?" someone whispered. "Yes. Tell them to aim higher." Her voice was light, almost bored. "I'm bored." The words hung in the air. For a moment, no one moved. Then, the crew snapped into action. There was a strange thrill in obeying someone who seemed completely unafraid. Orders were relayed with precision, ships aligning in formations that were both beautiful and deadly. The Dauntless led the front line, her hull gleaming faintly under the distant starlight. The Thryn fired first. Streams of plasma cut through space, each bolt meant to annihilate. Explosions rippled along the edges of human ships, and alarms blared. The bridge shook under the force of impact. Alara did not flinch. She leaned slightly against the console, one hand brushing her hair back again. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. "Counterattack. All fire concentrated on the lead squadrons. Precision, not panic. Follow my lead." The humans responded like a single organism. Targeting systems locked onto enemy weak points. And in moments, the first Thryn ships erupted in brilliant flashes of light. The crew could barely contain their astonishment. Ships that had seemed unstoppable fell apart under the precise human assault. Ramos's eyes widened. "Captain, that was perfect." Alara's lips curved into a faint smile. Just the beginning. The battle unfolded like a deadly dance. The Thryn, confident in their numbers, pressed forward, attempting to encircle the human fleet. But humans were unpredictable. They split, merged, and maneuvered in ways that the aliens could not anticipate. Each strike was calculated, every move deliberate. The aliens' confidence wavered as their ships began to falter against the smaller, more agile human vessels. On the bridge, tension mixed with exhilaration. The crew was afraid, yes, but also alive in a way they had never known. There was a thrill in watching the enemy falter, in knowing that their own courage, combined with intelligence, could turn the tide. "Captain, their flagship is taking heavy damage," shouted another officer. Alara's eyes glimmered with a spark of excitement. "Good. Keep the pressure. Force them to react, not act." A young ensign piped up hesitantly. "Captain, they're beginning to retreat." Alara's smile broadened slightly. "Exactly where we want them." The human fleet did not pursue recklessly. Instead, they held formation, forcing the Thryn to withdraw in a careful, controlled retreat. It was a lesson in respect. The humans had shown not only strength, but a capacity for strategy that the Thryn had not anticipated. As the last of the enemy ships slipped beyond sensor range, Alara allowed herself a moment to relax. She adjusted her hair once more. The casual gesture a stark contrast to the chaos they had just survived. Her crew, still catching their breath, looked to her in awe. There was no boast, no arrogance. Just calm, unwavering confidence that inspired everyone on board. Ramos leaned toward her, voice barely audible. "Captain, we did it. We actually did it." Alara's eyes softened slightly as she looked around at her crew. "We did it because we're human. Not because we're the biggest or the strongest, but because we think, adapt, and never give up." The crew nodded, absorbing her words. There was pride here, not just in victory, but in identity. Humans had faced a force that seemed unbeatable and had not only survived but had demonstrated that cleverness and courage could triumph over raw power. In the aftermath, sensors continued to monitor the retreating Thryn. Their numbers were vast, but humans had proven something crucial: that unpredictability was a weapon, and that intelligence combined with audacity could turn fear into opportunity. Alara turned from the main console and walked along the bridge. Crew members made room instinctively. She paused at the observation window, staring into the stars. Somewhere out there, the Thryn would be reassessing everything they thought they knew about humanity. Somewhere out there, they would remember the ship that did not panic, the captain who adjusted her hair and laughed in the face of annihilation, and the fleet that refused to bow. "Set course for the forward perimeter," she ordered. "We need to be ready. This is far from over." "Yes, Captain," came the chorus of responses. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that her crew's spirits were high. Humans were at their best when facing impossible odds. Every challenge was a chance to prove that spirit. Every battle, no matter how terrifying, was an opportunity to demonstrate ingenuity, courage, and the sheer unbreakable will that defined them. The stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter. The human fleet had survived the first strike, and in doing so, they had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity was not just a species to be observed, it was a force to be reckoned with. Alara turned back to her crew, her demeanor calm but commanding. "Get some rest if you can. We may have won the first round, but the game is just beginning." Even as her words settled over the bridge, the young ensigns and seasoned officers alike understood something fundamental. With Alara Voss leading them, they were not just survivors. They were humans at their absolute best, brave, clever, and unshakable. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, beyond the fading light of the battle, the Thryn were learning the same lesson. Humans were not easily intimidated. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were, in a word, remarkable. And Captain Alara Voss, adjusting her hair for the third time that hour, had only just begun to show them why. The Dauntless moved quietly through the cold black of space, trailing the retreating Thryn fleet at a careful distance. Captain Alara Voss stood at the observation deck, her hands resting lightly on the railing, eyes fixed on the stars. The battle had been won, but she knew the war was far from over. The Thryn were not easily defeated. They would regroup, adapt, and strike again. Lieutenant Ramos approached, a tablet in hand. "Captain, we've intercepted some of their communication signals. They're talking about regrouping near the Helios Nebula. They might try to outflank us there." Alara tilted her head, studying the data. The nebula was a dangerous place full of ion storms and gravitational distortions that could tear ships apart if navigated incorrectly. But that was the advantage humans had: thinking differently, taking risks others wouldn't. "Good," she said, her voice calm. "Prepare a route through the nebula. I want the fleet to follow, but stay spread out. We're going to make them underestimate us again." Ramos blinked. "You want to lure them in?" Alara smirked. "Not just lure them. We're going to make them dance." The crew immediately set to work. The human fleet adjusted formations, creating patterns that seemed erratic, almost careless. But every move was precise, every maneuver calculated to draw the Thryn into a trap. The Dauntless led the way, cutting through the swirling clouds of the nebula with practiced skill. The stars outside bent and shimmered in the electromagnetic storms, making the alien fleet even more vulnerable. As they entered the dense cloud of gas and plasma, sensors screamed warnings of fluctuating gravity and magnetic interference. Yet humans adapted quickly. Pilots adjusted thrusters with microsecond precision, and the engineering teams kept the ship stable despite the turbulence. "Captain," said Ensign Lyra, her voice tight with concentration, "their scouts are approaching the outer edge of the nebula. They're moving cautiously. Maybe suspicious." Alara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. Let them be suspicious. Let them think they're safe. That's when we strike." Hours passed as the fleet moved silently, shadows among shadows. The Thryn watchers cautiously followed, scanning for human movements, trying to predict the next step. But humans were unpredictable, moving with a confidence that suggested knowledge beyond their instruments. Finally, the moment came. A small squadron of Thryn cruisers entered a narrow corridor between ion clouds. Drawn by the apparent weakness of the human formation, they fired, but their shots scattered harmlessly against carefully positioned decoys. The humans had planned for this, every ship in position to channel the enemy into a deadly trap. "Now!" Alara shouted. The human fleet moved like a storm. Smaller ships flanked the Thryn, while the Dauntless led a direct assault on their command cruiser. Energy beams tore through the nebula, illuminating the clouds in brief, brilliant flashes. The Thryn were taken completely off guard. Their disciplined formations became chaotic as they tried to escape the deadly precision of human attacks. Ramos watched in awe. They didn't see this coming. Not even close. Ilara's eyes were cold, focused. They won't. Humans are clever. Humans are unpredictable. That is our strength. The battle inside the nebula was fierce but brief. The Thryn lost several cruisers, their retreat turning into a disorganized scramble to escape. The humans, while smaller in number, had leveraged strategy and ingenuity to inflict maximum damage with minimum loss. Once the last of the enemy ships fled, Alara allowed herself a deep breath. The nebula's storms raged around them, but the human fleet remained intact. "Damage reports," she said, her voice steady. Ramos responded quickly. "Minor hull breaches, nothing critical. Shields holding. Engineering says all ships are operational." Alara nodded. "Good. We'll use this time to reposition and repair. The Thryn will be back. They always are." While the crew worked, Alara called a meeting in the strategy room. She gathered her officers around the holographic star map, showing the enemy positions and human fleet movements. "We've learned something important," she said. "The Thryn rely on intimidation and numbers. They do not adapt quickly. Humans, on the other hand, are flexible, creative, and relentless. We will use that." Lieutenant Ramos leaned forward. "Captain, what do you propose next? Do we continue to chase them, or do we fortify the system?" Alara's eyes glimmered. "We do both. We'll fortify key points. Yes. But we will also set traps, make them think they are gaining the upper hand. Humans are better when the enemy is overconfident. That is how we will win." The officers nodded, understanding the brilliance in her plan. It was audacious, yes, but it relied on humans' greatest strength, imagination, and courage under pressure. As preparations continued, Alara took a moment to walk along the observation deck. Crew members passed her, some murmuring their respect, others quietly smiling at her calm demeanor. She adjusted her hair again, a small gesture that had become almost symbolic among the crew, a reminder that fear could be overcome with confidence and composure. Suddenly, the communications officer called out, "Captain, incoming transmission. It's the Thryn. They want to negotiate." Alara raised an eyebrow. Negotiation from the Thryn was unusual. They rarely sought compromise unless they were forced to recognize a challenge. She gestured for the message to be displayed. A holographic image appeared, showing the Thryn commander, a towering figure with alien armor glinting under strange light. "Humans," the commander's voice echoed in the room. "You are clever, but you will not win. Retreat and leave this system, or face destruction. Alara leaned back slightly, her expression calm. Tell them we are not leaving. And if they wish to try again, we'll be waiting. But they should aim higher next time. We are bored. The Thryn commander's face seemed to twitch, confusion and frustration mingling in its alien features. The message ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Ramos broke the quiet. Captain, you really said that? Alara shrugged lightly. I did. Sometimes the best defense is confidence. Sometimes, letting them know we are not afraid is more powerful than any weapon. Her officers understood. The human spirit was unpredictable, bold, and clever. The Thryn had underestimated it, and that mistake would cost them dearly if they tried to strike again. As the fleet moved to secure their positions, scouts reported debris from the previous battles and signs of minor damage to the Thryn's retreating ships. They will regroup, Ramos said, his voice low. Alara nodded. And when they do, we'll be ready. Humans always are. The fleet's movements were methodical now. Engineers repaired minor damage, while ships took new positions near the colonies they had sworn to protect. Civilians had begun to return cautiously, reassured by the presence of human forces and the bravery they had witnessed. Alara walked back to the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, the Thryn would be planning. But humans had an advantage they could not match: imagination, courage, and the ability to surprise. A young ensign approached hesitantly. Captain, do you ever get scared? Alara turned, her eyes meeting the youth's with calm intensity. Of course, fear is human. But we do not let it control us. We let it sharpen us. We let it remind us why we fight. And we do not back down, no matter the odds. The ensign nodded, inspired. Around the bridge, the crew moved with renewed purpose, repairing ships, adjusting weapons, and preparing for whatever came next. The first battle was over, but the war was far from won. And yet, humans had proven they could meet impossible odds with intelligence, courage, and a little audacity. Hours passed. The nebula's storms calmed slightly, and the stars beyond shimmered with a quiet light. The human fleet remained vigilant, ready for any movement by the Thryn. Alara knew they would strike again. This was only the beginning of the war for Orion's reach, but she also knew humans had already made their mark. They'll think twice next time, she said softly to herself, adjusting her hair once more. It was a small gesture, but it symbolized something greater: confidence, control, and the human ability to remain calm and clever when everything else seemed uncertain. And that, she knew, was the key to victory. Humans were more than soldiers. They were thinkers, strategists, and above all, unpredictable. In the coming battles, that unpredictability would be their greatest weapon. Alara returned to her chair on the bridge, placing her hands lightly on the controls. All stations, stay alert. The Thryn will be back. But they will learn something important about humans. We do not give up. We do not falter. And we never, ever stop thinking. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. But humanity had already begun to shine in a way the galaxy would never forget. The human fleet had regrouped near the outer colonies. But the sense of relief was brief. Sensor arrays picked up unusual activity near the Helios Nebula. Thryn forces were returning, larger and more aggressive than before. The reports sent a ripple of tension through the fleet, yet Captain Alara Voss remained calm, her presence steadying the nerves of everyone on board the Dauntless. We knew this would happen, she said, her voice quiet but firm. The Thryn never give up. They fight with numbers because they think fear and firepower can overcome us. They are wrong. Lieutenant Ramos adjusted the tactical console, his fingers flying over the interface. Captain, they've split into multiple squadrons. Some are heading straight for the colonies. Civilian ships are preparing for evacuation. But there's limited time. Ilara's gray eyes narrowed. Then we stop them, full alert. All ships move to defensive positions near the colonies. I want intercept squads ready. And I want my strike team in the heart of their formation before they realize what we're doing. The bridge erupted into controlled activity. Pilots and officers moved with precision, obeying Ilara's orders, as though their lives depended on it, because they did. Yet there was something more than fear in their movements. There was trust. The crew knew their captain was not just skilled but brilliant, capable of turning impossible odds into opportunities. Hours later, as the first Thrin ships appeared on the sensor grids, the colonies braced for impact. Evacuation shuttles scrambled through orbit, guided by human defense ships, forming a protective perimeter. The Thrin fired upon the fleet, energy beams cutting through the void, but the humans responded with coordinated precision. Lasers intercepted incoming attacks, shielding fields flared against plasma, and countermeasures diverted deadly strikes. "Captain, the enemy is splitting even further," reported Ensign Lyra, her voice tense but focused. "Some are moving toward the central colony. Others are heading to the outer rim." Ilara's mind worked rapidly. "Divide and conquer. Take the outer rim squadron first. Lieutenant Ramos, coordinate with the intercept teams. I'll lead a strike group directly at the central command cruiser. We'll disrupt their coordination before they can regroup." The Dauntless moved forward, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Smaller human strike ships followed, weaving through enemy fire with incredible agility. The Thrin commander, confident from previous battles, did not anticipate the humans' audacity direct attacks in the heart of their fleet, a move that seemed reckless but was anything but. Ramos's hands flew over the console. "Captain, shields holding, but enemy fire is intense." Ilara's expression was calm, almost serene. "Stay focused. Trust your instincts and your training. Remember what makes humans strong: adaptability. Use it." The strike team moved through the Thrin formation with astonishing speed. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, disabling engines and taking out smaller cruisers. The central command ship, massive and imposing, struggled to maintain formation as human ships danced around it, striking with pinpoint accuracy. "Captain, they're trying to retreat," shouted Lyra. Ilara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Let them. Funnel them where we want. Guide them into the trap." As the Thrin tried to escape, human forces surrounding the outer rim cut off their retreat. The fleet had anticipated every move, forcing the enemy into a situation with no easy way out. Ships became trapped between advancing human squads, energy beams tearing through their hulls. "Engineering reports minimal damage to our ships," Ramos noted, relief in his voice. "They're holding up better than expected." "Aye." Ilara nodded. "Good. Keep pushing. Every second counts. Every strike matters." Inside the central Thrin cruiser, confusion erupted. The alien commander barked orders, but their fleet was in chaos. The humans had struck decisively, disrupting communication lines and disabling critical systems. For the first time, the Thrin were reacting, not acting. They were forced into defensive maneuvers, scrambling to escape the precision and strategy of human forces. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Ilara's calm demeanor was infectious. The crew moved with confidence, coordinating attacks and protecting civilians. It was not raw strength that won the battle, it was ingenuity, adaptability, and courage under pressure. "Captain, we've disabled their primary weapons," Lyra reported, excitement creeping into her voice. "Command cruiser is vulnerable." Ilara's eyes gleamed. "Then finish it. Focus fire on the engines. Force them to retreat, or they'll lose everything." The human fleet concentrated their fire. Brilliant beams of energy struck the alien ship's engines, and sparks of plasma erupted as the vessel faltered. Thrin ships tried to regroup, but humans anticipated their every maneuver. The command cruiser was crippled, drifting helplessly among the nebula clouds. The colonies watched in awe as human ships carried the day once again. It was more than a victory. It was a message. Humans were resilient, clever, and unpredictable. They could not be intimidated by numbers or raw firepower. Ramos leaned toward Ilara, awe evident in his expression. "Captain, they're retreating again. This is incredible." Ilara's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained sharp. "It's not over." They'll regroup, they'll come back stronger. But we've shown them something important today. Humans do not back down. We think. We adapt. We fight. The Thrin commander's face flickered across the tactical screens, a mixture of anger and disbelief. For the first time, the aliens had been bested not by weapons alone, but by strategy, intelligence, and the audacity of human courage. As the last Thrin ships withdrew beyond sensor range, Elara allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The strike team had executed flawlessly. The fleet had coordinated seamlessly. And the colonies were safe. It was a victory born of human ingenuity and determination. Yet there was no time for celebration. Elara knew the Thrin would return, perhaps with greater numbers or new tactics. Humans had proven themselves. But the galaxy was vast, and threats were endless. She turned to her officers. "Report. Minimal casualties among humans," Ramos said. "Damage is manageable. All colonies remain intact. Evacuations were successful." "Excellent," Elara replied. "Prepare for the next encounter. Strengthen defenses and continue reconnaissance. They will strike again. And we must be ready." The bridge settled into a tense calm. The crew repaired minor damage and checked weapon systems, ready for any sign of the enemy. Elara walked along the observation deck, watching the stars. Somewhere in the void, the Thrin were reassessing, planning, and perhaps fearing what humans were capable of. Ensign Lyra approached quietly. "Captain, how do you stay so calm? After everything, you never seem afraid." Elara turned, her gaze steady. "Fear is natural. It is human. But courage is choice. We feel fear, but we do not let it control us. We use it to sharpen our focus, to make better decisions. That is what makes humans strong." Lyra nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the lesson. Around the bridge, the crew continued their work. Energized by their success and inspired by Elara's leadership, the stars outside shimmered in silence, a vast expanse that seemed both beautiful and dangerous. Humanity had survived another battle, demonstrating not only skill and bravery, but a spirit that was impossible to break. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious because they were humans clever, adaptable, and relentless. Elara returned to her chair at the center of the bridge. The nebula's light cast shifting patterns across her face, but her expression remained calm, controlled. "All stations," she said, her voice carrying through the bridge, "stay alert. We've won today, but the war is far from over. Remember what makes us human. Intelligence, courage, and the ability to surprise. We will fight. We will adapt. And we will endure. And the Thrin will learn. Humans are not to be underestimated." Her words settled over the bridge like a steadying force. The crew worked with renewed determination, preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. Humanity had survived, and they would continue to survive not by chance, but by strategy, courage, and unity. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. But humanity had begun to shine. A light in the darkness that no enemy could extinguish. And Captain Elara Voss, calm, confident, and daring, had shown them the way. The Thrin fleet had retreated to the far reaches of Orion's reach, but Captain Elara Voss knew better than to assume the war was over. Her crew was tense, but ready. Humans had survived the first waves and proven their ingenuity. But the enemy would return with new strategies, and the stakes were higher than ever. The colonies, though shaken, were resilient. Humans had repaired much of the damage, and civilians were beginning to rebuild, their spirits lifted by the bravery they had witnessed. Ships of all sizes moved through the orbiting spaceways, resupplying and reinforcing the defensive perimeter. In the command room aboard the Dauntless, Elara reviewed sensor data with Lieutenant Ramos and Ensign Lyra. "They'll come back," Ramos said, his tone steady but cautious. "They always do. And this time, they might be larger, more prepared," Elara nodded. "That's why we'll strike first. We'll anticipate their moves, control the battlefield, and leave them no chance to take the initiative. Humans win when we are creative and relentless. This is our advantage. The fleet was reorganized, each ship placed in strategic positions around the colonies. Scout teams monitored the outer systems, while fast attack units prepared to intercept the Thryn before they reached populated areas. Engineers worked tirelessly to ensure that every vessel was at peak performance. The Dauntless, leading the strike team, became a symbol of resilience, a command center from which every order flowed with precision. Several hours later, sensors detected a massive surge of energy in the distance. The Thryn were returning, more numerous than ever. Their fleet gleamed with alien weaponry, energy shields pulsing with an intimidating glow. The colonies braced, civilians sheltering as human warships moved into formation. "Captain," Lyra said, her voice tense but controlled. "They're heading straight for the central colony. Their formation is tight and aggressive. They want to hit us hard and fast." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll give them something they didn't expect. Prepare the strike teams. I will lead the direct assault on their command cruiser. Everyone else, maintain perimeter defenses and be ready to support. We control the engagement, not them." The bridge was alive with coordinated activity. Pilots and officers executed orders with precision. The humans moved like a single organism, each ship acting in harmony with the others, guided by both strategy and instinct. The Thryn approached, confident in their superior numbers, unaware of the trap awaiting them. Ilara's voice cut through the bridge. "All units, engage on my mark. Timing is everything. Trust your training and each other. Let's remind them who they are dealing with." The strike teams advanced, weaving through incoming fire with astonishing agility. Beams of energy met shields, deflected and absorbed as human ships closed the distance. The Thryn fired relentlessly, but humans anticipated every move. Smaller ships flanked the enemy, disrupting their formation, while the Dauntless led a precise assault on the central command vessel. "Captain, their weapons are offline," reported Ramos, astonishment in his voice. "The command cruiser is vulnerable." Ilara's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. "Then finish it. Focus fire on their engines, force them to retreat, or they'll lose everything." Energy beams struck the alien ship with deadly precision. Sparks erupted across its hull as systems failed one by one. The Thryn attempted to regroup, but the humans had anticipated every maneuver, forcing the enemy into a corner with no escape. Ships that had once been terrifying now struggled to survive, trapped between advancing human squads. The colonies watched in awe as the human fleet executed maneuvers that seemed impossible. For the first time, the Thryn experienced true fear. Not the fear humans felt in previous battles, but the realization that their opponent was clever, bold, and relentless. "Captain," Lyra said quietly, "they're retreating. Their command ship is crippled. They're leaving our system." Ilara's eyes softened slightly, but her focus never wavered. "Good. But this is only one victory. The war is far from over. Prepare defenses and remain vigilant. We cannot afford complacency." As the last Thryn ships fled, the human fleet consolidated its positions. Engineers repaired minor damage, and supplies were redistributed to ensure every vessel was ready for the next engagement. Civilians cautiously returned to the colonies, reassured by the presence of capable defenders. Ramos approached Ilara, a mix of pride and relief in his voice. "Captain, we did it. They won't underestimate humans again." Ilara smiled faintly. "They never learn the first time, but they do learn eventually. And every lesson they learn reminds them why humans are formidable. We think, we adapt, and we never stop fighting." The bridge quieted as the crew absorbed the significance of their success. Humans had faced overwhelming odds, yet they had emerged victorious through ingenuity, courage, and unity. The Thryn had underestimated them, and that mistake had cost dearly. Ilara turned to look out the observation window. The stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of the vastness of space and the challenges that lay ahead. Yet humanity had shown its brilliance, its strength, and its indomitable spirit. "Captain," Lyra said softly, "do you think they'll try again?" Ilara's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. They may. But we'll be ready. Humans are stronger than they realize. Our ingenuity, our courage, our ability to think and act beyond expectation. These are our weapons. The Thryn may have numbers, but we have something more powerful. The human spirit. The crew nodded, inspired by their captain's words. Repairs continued. Formations adjusted. And the fleet remained vigilant. Every human ship, every officer, and every pilot understood the lesson. Victory was earned, not by sheer force, but by strategy, adaptability, and the refusal to back down. As the last waves of Thryn ships disappeared into the darkness, Ilara allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Her fleet had performed flawlessly. Civilians were safe. Humanity had proven once more that they were a force to be reckoned with. She adjusted her hair, a small gesture that had become almost symbolic among her crew, a reminder of calm confidence in the face of chaos. Her officers exchanged glances, smiling at the quiet bravery their captain displayed. It was not boastful or arrogant. It was simple, resolute confidence, the kind that inspired loyalty and courage in others. "Prepare a status report for all colonies," she ordered. "Ensure every system is secure, every ship ready. We may have won this battle, but the galaxy is vast, and threats remain. Humans must always be vigilant." "Yes, Captain," came the response from the crew, unified and precise. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the struggles of mortals below. Yet humanity had left its mark. The Thryn would remember the battles fought here, the brilliance of human strategy, and the audacity of a species that refused to be intimidated. As repairs finished and the fleet settled into a defensive formation, Ilara allowed herself a small, private smile. "Well, that was fun," she murmured, her voice light. "Who's up for training drills tomorrow?" Her crew chuckled softly, the tension of battle lifting slightly. In that laughter, in that shared relief and pride, lay the essence of humanity. Resilience, cleverness, and a spirit that could not be broken, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The colonies thrived under human protection. Trade routes reopened, communications stabilized, and people went about rebuilding their lives with renewed hope. The human fleet patrolled Orion's reach, a silent but unwavering presence, ready to respond at a moment's notice. In distant systems, word spread of the humans who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Other species began to see humanity differently, not merely as another race in the galaxy, but as a force to be respected. Clever, unpredictable, and audacious, humans had demonstrated a unique combination of intelligence, courage, and resilience. Ilara watched the stars one last time that evening, the nebula casting a soft glow across the bridge. "Humans are remarkable," she said quietly, almost to herself. "We survive, we adapt, and we always find a way." Her crew moved around her, repairing, monitoring, and planning. Each human officer understood that victory was not a gift, but earned through courage, strategy, and unity. They were more than soldiers. They were thinkers, innovators, and protectors. And under Captain Ilara Voss, they had proven just how extraordinary humans could be. The galaxy was wide, and challenges were endless, but humanity had learned a lesson that would guide them through every conflict. Fear could be met with courage, strength could be matched with ingenuity, and the human spirit could overcome the most overwhelming odds. And Captain Ilara Voss, calm, daring, and brilliant, had led them through it all. Adjusting her hair one final time, she smiled at her crew. The battle was over. The Thryn had been forced to acknowledge humanity's power. The colonies were safe, and the human race, clever and unyielding, had emerged victorious, ready for whatever the stars might throw at them next. The stars stretched endlessly across the void, but humanity shone brighter than ever. A beacon of courage, ingenuity, and hope in a galaxy that had just begun to learn to respect them.